The most dangerous places in the world aren't always deep in the woods or at the bottom of the ocean. Sometimes, they are built of concrete, steel, and fluorescent lights. Sometimes, they are hidden in plain sight, inside the buildings we walk past every single day. My name is Kira. I've spent the last decade in search and rescue, mostly handling urban extractions. That's a fancy term for finding people who wander into abandoned places and don't wander back out. Last Tuesday, I was called to the St. Jude's Medical Annex. It's a massive, rotting hospital complex in the heart of the city that's been slated for demolition for 20 years. The police called us because a group of 3 urban explorers had gone in to film a haunted vlog. 2 of them came running out screaming about shifting walls. The third one, a kid named Tyler, never made it to the exit. I suited up with my standard gear, heavy-duty boots, a tactical vest, and my high-lumen flashlight. The air inside the annex smelled like wet drywall and ancient medicine. The blueprints I had were simple. The building had 12 floors, a basement, and a mechanical roof. Nothing unusual. I started on the ground floor. The silence was thick, the kind of silence that feels like it's pressing against your eardrums. I checked the stairwells first. They were blocked by collapsed masonry. That left only one way up, the service elevator. Normally, I'd never trust an elevator in a building this old. But the annex still had a strange, flickering power supply from the city grid, and the service lift was the only thing still moving. I stepped inside the metal cage. The buttons were yellowed and cracked. 1 through 12. I pressed 4, where the explorers said they last saw Tyler. The lift groaned. It started to move with a rhythmic thump-hiss sound. But as it passed the second floor, the lights flickered. The elevator didn't stop at 4. It kept going. I watched the digital display above the door. 8, 9, 10, 11. 12. And then, the red numbers shifted. They didn't stop. They formed a number that shouldn't have been there. 13. The doors opened with a slow, agonizing screech. I stepped out, my hand instinctively reaching for my radio. Base, this is Kira. I've reached a floor not on the blueprints. I think I'm between 12 and the roof. Static. Pure, white noise was all that came back. The 13th floor didn't look like the rest of the hospital. There was no dust here. No graffiti. The walls were a pristine, sickly pale yellow. The carpet was damp and smelled like old rainwater. And the lights, the fluorescent tubes hummed with a frequency that made my teeth ache. I started walking down the hallway. It was perfectly straight, stretching so far into the distance that the walls seemed to touch. Every 20 feet, there was a door. Identical. No room numbers. No signs. Tyler. I called out. My voice didn't echo. It just dropped dead, as if the walls were absorbing the sound. I opened the first door on my left. It was a patient room. Inside, a television from the 1970s was flickering with static. On the bed sat a man in SAR uniform. His back was to me. "Officer?" I whispered. He turned around slowly. His face was a blur, literally. It was like a long-exposure photograph where the subject moved. His features were smeared across his skin. But on his chest was a name tag I recognized, Merser. Merser had been a legend in our department. He went missing in this same building in 1998. "Kira," the smear-faced man said. His voice sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "You're late for the shift change." "Merser." "It's been 28 years, I said, backing away. He tilted his head. "Years? No. The sun hasn't gone down yet. We just have to wait for the elevator to reset. It only stops here when it's hungry." I slammed the door and ran. I didn't care about the protocol anymore. I needed to find Tyler and get out. I ran for what felt like miles down that yellow hallway, but every time I looked back, the elevator doors were still right there, open and waiting. The geometry was broken. I was running, but I wasn't moving. Then I heard it. A sobbing sound. It was coming from the ceiling. I looked up. Tyler was there. He wasn't hanging. He was merged into the ceiling tiles. His torso and head were sticking out of the plaster, his eyes wide with a terror so deep it looked like his pupils had shattered. "Kira," he gasped. "Don't press the buttons. The buttons are how it chooses the parts." "Tyler, hold on. I'm coming up." I reached for a maintenance ladder, but the moment I touched the wall, the yellow wallpaper felt warm. It felt like skin. The building wasn't a building. It was a digestive system. I realized then why the 13th floor was so clean. There was no dust because the floor ate everything that didn't belong. The explorers, the missing officers, the birds that flew into the windows, they were all being slowly absorbed into the architecture. I scrambled back into the elevator. I didn't press 1. I didn't press G. I took my tactical knife and jammed it into the space between the buttons, prying the entire panel off the wall. Behind the buttons, there were no wires. There were veins. Thick, pulsing, purple veins that leaked a clear, salty fluid when I cut them. The elevator shrieked. A sound of pure mechanical and biological agony. The floor began to shake. The yellow walls of the hallway started to ripple and contract like a throat. I grabbed the manual override lever and pulled it down with everything I had. The lift plummeted. My stomach hit my throat as we dropped through the darkness. The doors burst open on the ground floor. I didn't look back. I ran through the lobby, through the rusted gates, and didn't stop until I felt the cold, night air of the city on my face. I looked up at the St. Jude's medical annex. It looked normal. A hollowed-out shell of brick and glass. But in the window of the top floor, a floor that shouldn't exist, I saw a flickering yellow light. And for a split second, I saw a hand pressed against the glass. A hand with a SAR uniform sleeve. The official report says Tyler was never found. They blamed it on a structural collapse. The annex was demolished 3 days later. But sometimes, when I'm in a modern office building or a shopping mall, I look at the elevator panel. I see the gap between the numbers. And if I listen closely, past the hum of the air conditioning, I can hear the rhythmic thump hiss of a heart beating behind the drywall. If you ever find yourself in a lift and the numbers don't stop at the top floor, don't get out. Stay in the cage. Because once the doors open on the 13th floor, the building won't let you leave until you become part of the floor plan. Have you ever been in a building where the floors didn't match the buttons? Or felt a wall that was just a little too warm to be stone? Tell me in the comments. I need to know how many of these ghost floors are still active. Subscribe to the Midnight Files. And remember, always take the stairs.